I want to preface this by saying I am dyslexic. Reading has always been a struggle for me my whole life. I understand how hard it can be to pick up a book, to stick with a book, or even just to find an audiobook version of something, or to find the drive to do something that asks so much of the reader compared to most other story mediums. And keep this in mind when I say you need to be reading books. I'm not going to make a preaching video here about how you're losing intelligence or something and need to start your academic journey. I find a lot of joy in academia, but it's not for everyone. What I mean, and what I'm going to explore in this video, is that reading either fiction or nonfiction books will change the way you experience almost all other forms of storytelling for the better. Let me explain. Today I read someone on social media talking about how they didn't like the new Superman movie, which is perfectly fine. You can like or dislike whatever movie you want, but it's the way that they said it that really took me aback. They said something along the lines of, because Clark and Lois had only been dating for 3 months, and Clark at one point in the movie says that he should have told her a long time ago that he loves her, that this was a sign of really bad writing and a logical fallacy. This, first of all, is, in my opinion, a really stupid complaint. And the fact that they got caught up in something that they say is an inconsistency, whether it is one or not, as being a logical fallacy, is what really got to me. This kind of sentiment is echoed all the time now in media criticism, that a thing must make full logical sense, that it must be and feel real. Realism in lighting, in the way people talk, and in the style in which a movie is presented. We can't let a movie have too many weird and fun editing choices, or audiences can't take it seriously. If there's something perceived as an inconsistency or flaw in any part of the continuity or larger universe, this is seen as a cardinal sin, not part of the filmmaking process. Not only is the film seen as something that must be proper and perfect to the audience to be good, but also it is talked about from the perspective that the filmmakers are the ones at fault for trying things that aren't correct. And this brings me to literature. These kinds of complaints, while they exist in literature, are not nearly as frequent. This is because of the role reading forces the reader to take up. The story isn't seen as an offering to the viewer, but instead something that the reader must engage with. And on a much more basic level, the form itself of reading forces the reader to bend to the will of the writer's prose. I'm not here to just say that books are better or a more prestigious form of media. They are just as silly and dumb and bad at times, and everything in between. Different genres, forms, and purposes. I'm simply saying that in the year of our Lord 2025, the medium of books are not viewed as basic entertainment. They are viewed, honestly, as a special thing that people either hate because of school and feel like they had to force themselves to engage with, or as like a super intense hobby that takes up a lot of your time and money. Rarely is there a casual reader anymore, but there once was. The culture used to be much more the same as movies or TV. The thing about movies or TV is that they are more passive. Netflix is even specifically making films that are designed to barely be watched. The idea of going to a movie theater or watching a television show is not mentally linked at all to the same kind of artistic engagement as reading a book. And within a light engagement of the medium, this view that movies and shows are just kind of fluff to watch and be enjoyed adjusts the way that these films are made, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, and also the way people start to view them, because the artistic aspect has mostly been removed from the way people view these projects. Instead of speaking of them critically from the perspective of themes and how it made them feel, or artistic integrity and vision, they are viewed through mostly two things: money and correctness. This culture has affected how almost every major film has been made and viewed by mass audiences lately. I mean, look at Star Wars. And I genuinely believe that's partially why movie theaters are in decline right now. There's no weight put on these productions as pieces of art over pieces of content. Reading, I believe, forces the person into the driver's seat and into the active headspace. You have to focus. Even with an audiobook, to really understand what's going on, you have to pay attention. Literature doesn't require the form of actual speech. In fact, it very often veers away from how people realistically talk. I mean, even in Old English times, they weren't speaking like people speak in Shakespeare. They weren't behaving like this. And yet, it can pull you in. And they work. And they do this by forcing the reader to engage with them. For example, let's talk about one of my favorite books, Dune. Dune has a couple of adaptations with varying successes. I've talked about them before on this channel, but it's admittedly a rather hard book to adapt because of the way it's written. Dune's plot is incredibly dense, full of setup, factions, and energy, but it only works because of the narrative seat that you're put inside. You understand Paul's psyche because you get a front row seat to it. This is why I'm not sure an adaptation of something like God Emperor Dune would ever work on film, because a lot of the method of the storytelling in Dune is via internal monologues and personal conversations. But Dune movies don't force you to pay attention or have the time to hold you as long as it takes to get through the whole book, so it has to improvise and create its own version of the story. The best adaptations thusly get to the heart and themes of what the book is about, and do the best job they can within their medium to bring to life their own version of that heart. The worst versions try to regurgitate the book in style and substance, leaving a husk of what was there that can really only be enjoyed if you're already familiar with the book, and if you just like enjoy the dumb spectacle of it all, which oftentimes I do. Movies can do this because they lack the same basic level of engagement needed, and therefore have no obligation to focus on prose unless it's the artistic vision of the crew and the production allows them to bring that to life. Reading more books will help you think about how and why themes progress, why characters talk the way they do, the writing choices and the plot, all due to the fact that you simply have to pay more attention to them just to know what's going on. And on a base level, exploring new forms of storytelling will expand what your mind expects or looks for in what it consumes. One of the worst things about streaming and fandom era of media is that it's easy to never experience art outside of things you already know you like. Searching for every trope you like in every piece of media, extracting the artistic intent, and thinking of the piece as catering specifically to you, all at your fingertips. It's so easy to never grow or want to grow in these things you experience. And I genuinely believe, for as dumb as it may sound, the more life perspectives that we can experience, the better people we become. The more open to art, people, and empathy we are. Books are a great place to start branching out because usually besides vocabulary and time, they're very approachable. You're in complete control of your reading experience. The pace, the images, the sounds, and so many of the classics introduce you to so many different ideas. People, places, Russian literature and English literature, French, American, Greek, and Norse, and these cultures and ideas over thousands and thousands of years can be explored in the exact same way at your speed. Which brings me to my next point of discussion, that reading books will help you be more open to foreign and experimental films, and just more open to stylistically weird films. Let me explain. America is one of the biggest birthplaces of cinema. While there are movies produced all over the world, very few hold worldwide distribution and style and a vice grip as much as American productions. But unfortunately for American audiences, this means they are rarely ever faced with anything foreign or experimental on a mass level. American filmmaking was born from the artists of plays early on, and they adopted a lot of the same style and prose into those movies. So even movies running all the way up until the 50s and 60s largely resemble plays in almost every way. Due to the distribution and economy of America, these movies were powerhouses, and the entire Hollywood industry was set in stone as the movie making end all be all of the world. This wouldn't change, and although there are other really strong filmmaking industries in other places like the UK, Canada, India, Japan, China, and Korea, the American film industry is so strong, and honestly, American xenophobia is so strong, that we've never really had a solid import of any of these movies besides like occasionally British and Canadian ones. Even as recent as the 80s and 90s, if you were experiencing any kind of foreign film media, it was probably TV, with imports on shows like Naruto and Dragon Ball really taking off. But movies? Slim pickings. And while the American film style has adapted and changed a lot over the years, barely resembling the plays and radio shows it started from, it still is rather homogenous for American audiences. That's why it's such a big deal when something like Parasite took Best Picture at the Oscars and not just Best Foreign Feature. For a film in America, there's kind of a mindset that America is where it's done right, and other countries is where they try their best and sometimes succeed. But with keeping in mind what I mentioned earlier in the video, we can look at the rise of digital media and film in the 2000s, and of course certain political shifts. And the landscape of filmmaking in America changed quite a bit, and realism was the new thing. Films felt less like fantasy with beautiful sets and rich, vibrant colors, and more like bleak films with natural lighting and on-the-ground kind of filmmaking. Films like The Dark Knight, Prisoner of Azkaban, Pride and Prejudice, No Country for Old Men, and There Will Be Blood. Now, I don't think this stylistic change is inherently a bad thing. I mean, I love almost all of those movies, and I think they look great, even with the more toned-back, real style compared to a lot of the filmmaking in the 80s and 90s. But it changed how audiences engage with film. All of a sudden, movies like Spielberg's War of the Worlds invoke home-recorded video. Found footage horror really started to take off after the success of the Blair Witch Project in the late 90s, and a new form of media kicked off in 2004 that started to take over majorly: YouTube. The rise of social media and the internet as we know it today, and the continued accessibility of filmmaking tools and ease of distribution led to an incredible era of filmmaking that's still going on today online that's rarely recognized. Home movies, short films, analog horror, experimental stuff. Some amazing style has come out of this. But the effects of these transformative digital films rarely make its way back to mainstream Hollywood. And as we've moved into the 2010s and even in the 2020s, realism has not stopped being one of the main stylistic driving forces of American film language. Although, of course, there are plenty of exceptions to this. If we look at things like the MCU, one of the most successful film series of all time with insane cultural impact, as we've moved forward and Disney has put less and less time and effort into the movies, they stick to their stylistic realism more and more than any of the comic influence and charm of the early movies. Gray color, the real feeling sets, or rather the real feeling sets and camera movements. And part of this is because it's cheaper and easier. It's easier and cheaper to make a real-looking film that anyone could record on their camera than it is to make a freaking Del Toro movie, you know? Of course, there are filmmakers who thrive in this setting. David Fincher's movies weaponize realism paired with often his sickeningly dark and sleek style to make movies that feel like nothing else you've ever seen. Scorsese has made some incredible movies within this prevailing style. Even The Wolf of Wall Street, one of his most well-known, which turns this gray realism into a fever dream of an American capitalist nightmare with the use of creative writing and really strong editing. I really want to reiterate that realism as a style is not the problem I'm having here, but instead what 2.5 decades of more or less the same juggernaut style does to young audiences when they have no other forms of media and other countries' media. It means that people my age, and even millennials, rarely need any kind of critical thinking to engage with the way any of these things are made. People know American film language really well even without realizing it. Look at platforms like TikTok, where young people can make some pretty amazing shorts and parodies just with the mastery of an iPhone camera and an understanding of movies within the last 20 years. But look at how at the same time these same people treat films that go outside of that understanding of film language. There are countless videos with hundreds and thousands of likes and views talking about how pretentious it is to like old black and white Russian films that are 3 hours, or how insufferable people are who watch French films, or making fun of the insane over-the-top nature of Bollywood films. And while of course these are made as jokes and a lot of these people don't fully believe what they're saying, they're just mostly making fun of annoying film nerds, the fact still applies that these jokes are partially entrenched in the fact that people find it really hard to engage with these kinds of films that go outside of the style they're familiar with, and I don't blame them. Tarkovsky is one of my favorite foreign directors. Solaris clears 2001: A Space Odyssey, sorry 2001 fans, and Stalker and Mirror are films like nothing else I've ever seen. But you know what? Stalker is 3 hours long and incredibly slow. It doesn't offer almost anything American film prepares you for. Its characters often operate only within like a plot setting, yet are also more in conversation about people and culture as a whole. The story pacing is non existent, there's rarely any action, it's filmed in almost a slow montage style. Anything that makes mass audiences know how to process it is just not present. It's a tough film to watch, and this is coming from someone who really enjoyed the experience it gave to me by the end. And I'm not gonna say that I didn't find it boring. It is on some level boring, but I think there are so many amazing pieces of art that can be a little boring to engage with. For another example that's a little bit more approachable, I found that mass audiences really struggle to engage with things that are kind of silly and campy in film. Sam Raimi comes to mind as one of the wackier American filmmakers when he made the recent Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a very tame and kind of lifeless film for Raimi standards. People got completely taken out with their suspension of disbelief when he would do some of his classic crazy visual effects that don't inherently look good in a traditional sense, but work for what he's going for, which is something goofier without sacrificing the actual stakes of the story. This is something I've talked about a lot with my girlfriend when we watch movies together, because she has a really hard time with this sometimes. And the reason often is she wants to fully understand what the movie is going for. And when she can't, when she feels like she doesn't fully understand the stylistic choices in the plot, her mind either jumps to this is kind of bad or it just pulls her out of it. So to try and help with this, now when we go into movies that are campier and weirder, like I just showed her Evil Dead 2 for the first time, I kind of give a little bit of an explanation to what the movie is trying to do before we get into it, so she can be prepared for the fact that it's a little off-putting stylistically. This happens to a lot of people, and I don't think it's the fault of the person. They just know what they know about American film language that's popular, and that's what they're prepared to process from their art. And they're just trying to enjoy simple art and not dissect it. But why do I think books can help with this? Remember, that's kind of the whole point of the video. Well, it goes along with what I mentioned in the previous section about books, and the way they get the reader to engage with them. They somewhat force the reader to think about what it is they are reading, and for style, the style is much more approachable and built into the book itself. It's easier to notice when a book is written from a different character perspective and why they'd want to do that, or when the structure is switched up. So many of the classics that we often read in school are foreign books and are written in a lot of different styles. Even reading books like Animal Farm in 1984 and other sci-fi and allegorical stories help people to go into books thinking about the fact that it's like gonna have a theme and that there's like a style that the book itself is written in and choices that the author made in structure and prose that can feed directly into those themes. How books like Dracula are supposed to feel more real and scary because they're written in an epistolary style. And at least in my experience, very directly, the more I've engaged with literature and the more I've learned about the style and prose of different countries from reading worldwide literature and books from different times, the easier it is to view all storytelling I run across through a similar lens. The more my brain is immediately jumping into, okay, why is this like this mode, instead of just shutting off or thinking it's bad when I find a style that's unfamiliar or even unpleasant. Why do we spend so long before we get to the zone in Stalker? Why does Bong Joon-ho use classical music so much? Why does Herzog's Nosferatu lean more into realism and themes about the plague? I think that books genuinely help to remind you that these stories are created. It's something hard to keep in mind with a film sometimes because it's so stylistically similar to what we're all making with our phones, and partially because it's an artistic effort of hundreds and sometimes thousands of people. It's harder when there's no page to look at to see where they broke the paragraphs. I've wanted to talk about these things for a long time. to make this video for a long time, but I haven't had a framing that I really wanted for it. Tying it to something as challenging for me as reading really brought the video to life. It's good for your art to challenge you, just as much as it's good for your art to be fun and dumb. There's nothing wrong with fun, dumb movies. I love them, you love them. I'm currently watching every single Pokemon movie for a ranking video I'm gonna do next month, and literally all of those are dumb and most of them are bad, and I'm having a blast. But I think if mass audiences experienced more from art, reading books and opening them up to different styles, learning about paintings and music and why they are the way they are, engaging with weird and cool, off-putting movies and TV and the places that it can take you. For as dumb as it sounds, I genuinely think the world would at least be one that's more understanding. A world where people try to think more about why things are the way they are before judging them. I mean, Twin Peaks is one of my all-time favorite series, and I think I would die if I had to recommend it to someone who wasn't already a Lynch fan, because it's so weird and often dumb and stylistically off-putting at so many points, especially season 2 of the original show. So please, while you enjoy whatever you enjoy, from the new Superman movie to Fortnite to Love Island, try to find time to branch out and learn about new forms of art and expression. Pick up a book, even if it's just like Walmart smut. That's something, you know? A new form, a new way for your brain to see storytelling. Give a foreign movie a chance and try to think about why it feels so different. Let your brain feel instead of getting caught up in the fact that it's different than what you're expecting, and the weird editing or slow pacing. Instead of immediately thinking this is bad, think about why is it like this and how does it make me feel? Allow art to challenge you, to have unpleasant stuff in it, opinions you agree or disagree with, bad characters. Because experiencing more of the world, even if you still don't like it at the end of the day, can help shape who you are as a person, making you more ready to try new things, to think about things critically, and to examine why something emotionally affected you. I promise it offers so much in return for the effort you put in. Read a book. Or at the end of the day, don't. I don't want to make this a thing where, like, if you don't do what I'm suggesting in this video, you're like a lesser person or anything. I don't want that to be the vibe. If you don't want to dedicate the time and effort it takes to read a book, you don't have to. It's perfectly fine to love what you love about art and just engage with it like that. I think it's great to broaden your horizons, and I think it would be good for mass audiences, and in turn would change the landscape of American filmmaking for the better if people thought about movies more critically. But if you don't care about these things, which it's genuinely okay not to care about these things, then I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and I hope you find nothing but joy and wonder from the media and art you love. Art is beautiful in all forms, and it can mean so much to people in so many different ways, and I never want to discount that. I would at least encourage you to think a bit more about why you enjoy the things you like. Whether the answer is for something super deep, or because you just like big explosions or cool animation. All answers are acceptable. It's just about figuring out yourself more through your art. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. This is kind of a rambly video. I haven't done one of these in a while where I'm kind of talking more about, like, a general concept. But it was really fun to write. I genuinely have been stewing on these ideas for a long time. I hope they turned into some sort of cohesive, enjoyable thing. But yeah, read a book. I would suggest most of the books on here, of course, with context. Stuff like Arabian Nights is really interesting, but you've got to keep in mind that it's going to be kind of racistly translated and has a lot of baggage attached to that. Obviously, I love Dune and Dracula. I've talked about those all the time. I love Inferno. It's so good. These are books that I'm currently reading right now, so I haven't started Consumed yet, but that's David Cronenberg's book. I'm in the middle of The Order of Things, which is a really interesting sociology book. One of my friends just wrote this, Hand of the Reaper. I haven't read it yet, but I'm really excited to. Shout out to Matt. Go check out his book. H.P. Lovecraft, I'm a huge fan of, despite H.P. Lovecraft being a terrible person. Like, that's what I'm saying. You can engage with so much more out of media if you're just willing to think about it critically. Because if you don't think about H.P. Lovecraft critically, you can come up with some weird beliefs. So just think, you know? And it doesn't just pertain to books or movies. It goes to all forms of art, to video games, to paintings, to music. It's good to listen and experience things that challenge you. I genuinely believe what I'm saying in this video. But thanks for watching. It's been crazy. It's been busy. I just spent a ton of money because I'm gonna go back to Belgium, going back to school in Belgium for another semester, probably for the last time. So again, when that happens, which I'll be leaving in like September, it'll probably be a little bit rockier on putting out videos again, but I'm sure you guys will get all kinds of updates on that. Again, I'm working on a Pokemon ranking video where I'm going to rank every Pokemon movie, and that's super fun. I love doing big rankings. So stay tuned. I love you all. Go experience some cool movies, and good night.